Assamese is part of the easternmost group of the Indo-Aryan languages. History of Assamese literature can largely be classified into three periods, including Early Assamese period, Middle Assamese period, and Modern Assamese beginnings. The history of Assam can be traced to the 4th century AD, though relics from beyond this period suggest some kind of a prehistory, through cave paintings, etchings on pots, etc. The Charyapadas have almost been referred to as the earliest example of Assamese literature. The Charyapadas pertain to Buddhist songs penned within the period of 8th to 12th centuries. These writings, by the way, correspond to Oriya and Bengali languages as well. The phonological and morphological characteristics of these songs bear exceedingly powerful semblance with Assamese, some of which have survived to this date. Despite the rich historical details of the pre-Ahom kingdom, literary history of Assam has been traced to the mystic lyrics, known as the Karyas, esoteric doctrines and erotic practices of the later Sahajayana form of Mahayana Buddhism, written by 23 Siddhapurusas. The oldest Assamese writer is Hema Saraswati of the late 13th century. His Prahlada Charita, based on the Sanskrit Vishnu Purana, depicts a finished Sanskritized Assamese. Other poets in the court of Kamatapur like Harihara Vipra and Kavyaratna Sarasvati rendered into Assamese the verse episodes from the Mahabharata in the early 14th century. Kaviraj Madhavakantli in the 14th century is the first great poet of Assam. His extant work consists of a version of the Ramayana and a narrative poem Bajeet. Another great poet was Durgavara, who retold the story of the Ramayana in songs. A large group of manuscripts known as the mantras of unknown authorship is extant, probably going back to the period before 1500. The mantras contain magical formulae against snakebite, against ghosts and demons, and against various kinds of diseases. Perhaps the most important contribution of the Ahom rule was the writing of the Burangi, a kind of prose history of the Ahom kingdom, which besides giving the accurate history of Assam also strengthened the tradition of the written word in Assam. The posto of Likakabarua was specially created for the writing of manuscripts recording the proceedings of the various departments under the king's rule. Most of the manuscripts are written on Sanchi leaves. Acti Movement. The greatest period of Assamese literature was ushered in with the Acti Movement started by the great Sankara. To spread this movement, a lot of literature was created: songs, poems and chants. Shankari religion like Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism is again centered on the written word, in this case that of Sri Mantasankara. The evening prayers in the Namga, or the house of praise, celebrate God through songs and chant a reading of sacred texts. Among the 27 works composed by him, the most important are the last canto of the Ramayana, some portions of the Bhagavata Purana, Kirtanagosha, Rukmani Harana, a narrative poem depicting an episode of the life of Krishna, the Bhakti Pradeepa, and the Nimi Navasada Samvada. He also wrote a number of dramas that show a Maithili influence. Another kind of poetry introduced by him was Bajeet, devotional poems, extremely popular to even this day. The father of Assamese prose literature, Bhattadeva, wrote 3 major books of Vaishnavism: Katha Gita, Katha Bhagavat, and Katha Ratnawali. He also penned other great books. The 17th century is renowned for the growth and development of the Charitpadi. Coming of the missionaries. It was only with the coming of the missionaries that the first printed book entered Assamese literary circles, the first printed book being the New Testament, printed by William Carey in 1813 with the help of Atmaram Sharma, and in 1833 the entire Bible. Like in the other parts of the country, the missionaries, with their interest in propagating Christianity, were the initiators in the establishment of the first first printing press in Assam as well. Christianity being the religion of the book and the missionaries seeking easy accessibility to the locals, almost always learnt the local languages, translating the Word of God for the use of the common people. For this purpose various pamphlets, magazines and other such media was also used, in connection with the American Baptist Mission Press, which is the first press to be established in Assam. The first name that comes to the forefront is that of the Reverend Dr. Nathan Brown. Nathan Brown was born on the 22nd of June 1807 in New Ipswich, New Hampshire, USA. He graduated from Williams College in 1827, holding the highest position in the class. He married Eliza Ballard on the 5th of May 1830. For a few years, he was associate principal of Bennington Seminary and editor of a weekly newspaper called the Vermont Telegraph. He attended the Newton Theological Institute in order to prepare himself for work as a missionary. He graduated in 1832. The American Baptist Missionary Union appointed him as a missionary to Myanmar in 1833. He headed for Assam at the request of Captain Francis Jenkins, the Commissioner of Assam. This request was made in order to launch the Shan Mission, aiming to help the British administration to enlighten, refine and educate the warrior tribes of Shan, Khatas and Singphos. Brown and his associate Oliver Cutter along with the printing press sailed to Calcutta. After a stopover in Calcutta, they set out for Sadiyu by river. A long, tiresome and dangerous trip brought them to the destination on the 23rd of March 1836. With the establishment of the first printing press in Assam, Brown's arrival ushered in an era of literary development in the region. Due to inadequate assistance from the mission and due to tribal aggression in Sadiya, Brown had to shift his base to Joypur near Naharkasia in 1839 and then to Sibsagar in 1843. He found Sibsagar to be a better place to work from. In fact, Upper Assam is seen the hub of printing and the early birthplace of the printed book in Assam. He remained there until 1855. Towards the end of 1844, Brown traveled on foot from Sibsagar to Guwahati, visiting villages in order to study the diverse cultural backgrounds of the people. He, along with two other missionaries, Miles Bronson and Cyrus Barker, organized and founded the First Baptist Church at Pan Bazaar in Guwahati on the 25th of January 1845. Brown also pioneered in establishing schools in different parts of the state. He established 14 Assamese medium schools in and around Sibsagar by 1846. Rev. Nathan Brown's Grammatical Notes of the Assamese Language, first published in 1848, originally was not intended to be regarded as a grammar of the Assamese language, but they were commenced with the intention of printing only a few sheets, for private use of the most common grammatical forms. Quote, however, this book soon served as the first Assamese grammar book. He wrote books on elementary arithmetic and geography which were much superior to Bengali books used in schools at the time. In this he was assisted by his wife Eliza, who was a translator in her own right. Brown was also a pioneer in the unearthing of old manuscripts and in editing and publishing them. Brown was involved in teaching, translating and preparing books in Assamese. He translated and published a catechism in Assamese. Brown found that the Assamese Bible published by William Carey from the Serampore Mission Press, in circulation at the time, consisted of Bengali and Sanskrit loan words, so it was idiomatically inadequate. Therefore, he undertook the project of translating the Bible into pure and simple Assamese and published the New Testament in 1848 from his press. Brown was also a pioneer in writing school books. His books on elementary arithmetic called Pratham Ganana, Dusho Ganana, and geography called Bhugal Bibor were much superior to Bengali books used in the schools at the time. He also translated and published John Bunyan's Pilgrim's Progress into Assamese. Brown's wife Eliza also translated a dozen tracts into Assamese and wrote arithmetic textbooks and story books for children. Due to ill health and certain problems in home mission, Brown, after 20 years of successful service, left Assam on 13 February 1855 for U.S. Arunodoi era. Arunodoi was the first Assamese magazine, printed by the Baptist Missionary Press in Sibsagar. It was first published in January 1846. The tagline for the magazine was, "The Arunodoi, monthly paper, devoted to religion, science and general intelligence." It continued to be published till 1879. The press, however, was sold in 1883. The editors of this magazine include Dr. Nathan Brown, A. H. Denforth, William Ward, and others. Though propagation of Christianity remained the main aim of the paper, it contained other articles related to science, current affairs, astrology, history, and local trivia. This paper helped in entrenching the Assamese intelligentsia, bringing into the forefront three key figures of Assamese literary world: Anandaram Dakil Pukan, Hemchandra Barua, and Nidhi Levi Arawal. The crowning glory of Brown's career was Arunodoi, which means the dawn. Brown did the editorial work, whereas Oliver Cutter was involved in printing and publishing the magazine. Brown was the editor of this magazine till he left for U.S. Under his editorship, Arunodoi published history by bringing out the texts of old chronicles in properly edited form, such as Chusha Burangi, Purani Assam Burangi, and Kamrapa Burangi. He also patronized various Assamese scholars and helped them publish. Among these publications, Kashyanath Mulipukan's Assam Burangi and Anandaram Dakil Pukan's Aksami Alora Mitro, and a few remarks on the Assamese language and on vernacular education. Bronson's A Spelling Book and Vocabulary in English, Assamese, Singpho and Naga, printed at the Mission Press in Sibsagar, are worth mentioning. After Brown, the Arunodoi was in circulation with occasional breaks until 1880. Following the example of Arunodoi, several newspapers and magazines were published in Assam in the second half of the 19th century. Prominent among these were Asam Bilasiani, Asam Darpan, Asam Mahir, Golpara Hitshadani, Chandrodaya, Asam Deepak Janaki, and Assam News. Assam Bandhu's Mao. Oliver Thomas Cutter was born on 19 March 1811 at Lexington, Massachusetts. The American Baptist Missionary Union appointed him as a missionary printer and publisher to Burma at the age of 20. With his wife, Harriet Lowe Cutter, he sailed from Boston in 1831, taking with him a steam printing press. He was joined by Nathan Brown and his wife Eliza Brown in Burma. The Cutters and Browns sailed for Assam in order to launch the Shan mission. Jenkins, the commissioner of Assam, also promised to contribute 2,000 rupees for a printing press. Cutter's main role was to print and publish books that were mostly translated or written by Brown. On arrival, Captain Jenkins presented them a large printing press, and contributed 500 rupees for its support. They published Kati, Singpho and Assamese books. Cutter's wife was actively involved in teaching in the school and preparing books for the press. Cutter went to Calcutta for a supply of additional type for his press. After shifting the base to Jaipur near Navhakasia in 1839, Cutter became involved in establishing more Assamese schools and wrote a 252-page vocabulary and phrases in English and Assamese, published in 1840 from the mission press at Jaipur. Looking for a more hygienic and conducive place for work, Brown shifted to Sibsagar in 1841 while Cutter continued at Jaipur superintending the operations of the presses under his care. However, tribal protest at the conversion activities carried on by the missionaries soon made Jaipur an extremely difficult place to work in and also inconvenient for printing due to threats from the locals, for which Cutter had to hide his presses. Finally, in 1843, Cutter moved to Sibsagar and established the printing press along the bank of the Dikau River near the cantonment. Along with Brown, he was involved in translating and printing numerous and diverse books and pamphlets. Apart from portions of the Bible, hymn books, tracts and school books in Assamese, a good number of other works were published under Cutter's care at the mission press. In 1853, Cutter left the mission work and joined as superintendent of the government press in Calcutta. Even today, the place at Sibsagar where Cutter established the printing press is locally known as Chapakhana. The Assam Yearbook 2008 acknowledges Cutter, Brown and Bronson among the 6 foreigners who rendered benevolent service for Assam. While Nathan Brown and Miles Bronson are well known for their contributions, however, a lesser-known junior missionary, the Reverend William Ward, played an important role in propagating the printing of the book in Assam. Ward was born on the 28th of August 1821 at Sheffield, Ohio, USA. He graduated from Madison University in 1848. The American Baptist Missionary Union appointed him as a missionary to Assam. He and his wife, Cordelia, reached Guwahati in April 1851. He worked in Guwahati for the first 6 years and then another 10 years in Sibsagar. Ward's wife, Cordelia, died in 1859 and he married one Susan, a missionary's widow, in 1860. Ward was a linguist par excellence. He translated the books of Genesis, Exodus and Psalms of the Bible and published these from the mission press at Shivasagar. Ward revised the Assamese hymn book called Kristyo Dharmagweed for a new edition to which he added scores of original and translated hymns. In the 4th edition of the book, published in 1890, 63 hymns were credited to Ward. Ward worked along with Nathan Brown in building up Arunodoi. He contributed many articles for this magazine and was also involved in editing and publishing it from 1861 to 1873. According to Hemchandra Barrowa's advice, Ward changed the system of orthography of Arunodoi from the previous and simplified one of Jaduram Dekabarua that was adapted by Brown, to the Sanskrit system as it is used today, replacing the dental N by cerebral N of Assamese alphabets. Ward corrected the spelling of Arunodoi in January 1861. This laid a milestone in the development of Assamese language. Ward's wife Susan was also associated with the Arunodoi magazine and edited a few issues of this magazine. She revised the missionary Oliver Cutter's wife Harriet Cutter's work vocabulary and phrases in English and Assamese and added many new vocabularies, making it about 4,500 entries, published brief vocabulary in English and Assamese with rudimentary exercises in 1864 from Mission Press, Sibsagar. This was the first book of this kind till Bronson's A Dictionary in Assamese and English was published in 1867. She also authored A Glimpse of Assam. Growth of printing in the 20th century. Printing and publishing began in Assam from around the end of the 19th century, a number of presses being established in Dibrugarh. The first press in Dibrugarh was established by Radhanath Chankakoti on the 9th of May 1881, called the Radhanath Press. Shivnath Bhattacharya established the Bhattacharya Press around the same time, printing mostly school textbooks and religious books. Nandeswar Chakravarti, a tea planter, set up the Sadashiva Press in 1905, while the Ahom Press, established in 1910, was another important press. It was due to the effort of Chandra Kumar Agarwala that the Assam Printers and Publishers Limited was formed, a joint company established along with Namoni Pukan, Sadananda Dura, Lakshmi Pukan. The Boroa Press, established in 1928 by Gunagovinda Boroa. Bolanath Press, established by Bolanath Gohain. Rajkowar Press, Jagran Press, etc. were important presses established during that period. One of the first indigenous names of Assamese print is Anandaram Dakil Pukan. Pukan was a writer, government employee and supporter of the American Baptist Mission Press and of its leaders Brown and Bronson for the work in the propagation of Assamese. Pukan was a great scholar and studied English literature, was one of the very first students of the school established by Francis Jenkins in 1835, and went on to study at Presidency College, Calcutta. He started his literary career at the age of 17 by contributing articles to Arunodoi. He then wrote Aksamia Laura Mitro, a textbook for schoolchildren modeled on English textbooks, publishing it from the Mission Press at Sibsagar. He wrote a pamphlet called A Few Remarks on the Assamese Language, and on the vernacular education in Assam, printing 100 copies from the Mission Press and distributing it to various government officials for the purpose of putting forward the case of Assamese language. Printing in Assamese became part of the greater movement against foreigners. The identity crisis caused due to the removal of Assamese as official language of Assam in favor of Bengali gave rise to a movement against Bahiragata, a resentment to the enforced language and a parallel struggle to regain the collective voice of a community. Udapan Dutta says in his essay, The Growth of Print Nationalism and Assamese Identity in two early magazines. Instead of the colonial economic exploitation, the Bengali linguistic hegemony was perceived as the real threat to the burgeoning Assamese nationality.